They said nobody wanted her there. Not her sister, not her father, not the glittering crowd inside that New Orleans ballroom where every smile had a price and every secret wore diamonds. Nora Whitaker knew what it felt like to be useful but never chosen. She knew the pain of standing in a borrowed dress in old shoes, pretending not to hear the people who called her invisible. Then Roman Blake walked in. The most feared man in the city passed the beautiful woman everyone expected him to want, and crossed the room for the girl no one bothered to see. But this is not just a story about romance. It is about power debt, betrayal, and the dangerous moment a woman realizes her mind is worth more than her silence. Stay until the end. Like this video and comment where you're watching from. The ballroom door closed behind Nora with a heavy metal click, and the music became a ghost. 1 second she had been standing beneath chandeliers bright enough to expose every cheap stitch in her rented dress. The next, she was in a narrow service corridor that smelled like rainwater, bleach, old smoke, and damp concrete. The walls were painted a tired gray. A single fluorescent light buzzed overhead, flickering like it was trying to decide whether to live or die. Nora stopped just inside the door. Her heart was still beating like it belonged to someone being chased. Roman Blake walked ahead of her without looking back. The fine wool of his black suit looked wrong in this hallway, too expensive for the cracked floor, too controlled for the dripping pipes overhead. He moved with the same quiet certainty he had carried through the ballroom, as if every place he entered became his by permission or by force. At the end of the corridor he pushed open another door with the flat of his palm. Cold air rushed in. Nora followed him into a concrete stairwell that overlooked a narrow alley behind the St. Aurelia Hotel. The noise of the city rose from below in broken pieces. Tires cutting through puddles. A distant siren fading toward the river. The low hum of a kitchen vent. Somewhere above them, the party continued, muffled now by brick and steel, as if it belonged to another life. Roman stepped onto a small metal landing and took a cigarette from the inside pocket of his jacket. Nora remained by the door. For several seconds, neither of them spoke. He lit the cigarette with a silver lighter. The flame caught for a brief second, sharpening the edges of his face. Nora saw the pale scar near his mouth, saw the faint shadow under his eyes, saw the tiredness that no tailored suit could hide. He inhaled once and looked down into the alley. "You can take off the shoes," he said. Nora blinked. "What?" "The shoes," Roman said, smoke leaving his mouth with the words. "They're hurting you." Nora looked down before she could stop herself. Her black heels were old, stiff, and cruel. The left one had rubbed the skin raw at the back of her foot. She had been pretending not to feel it since she stepped out of her father's car. "I'm fine," she said. Roman turned his head slightly. His eyes moved from her face to her feet, then back again. "You've been putting most of your weight on your right side since before I crossed the room." Nora felt heat crawl up her throat. "You watched me that closely." "Yes." The honesty of it startled her. It was not flirtation. It was not a compliment. It sounded more like a report filed by a man who noticed weak hinges, loaded weapons, and exits before he noticed perfume. Nora wrapped one hand around the cold railing. "That's unsettling." "Most true things are." He turned back toward the alley. Nora should have kept the shoes on out of pride. Vivian would have. Vivian could have stood barefoot on broken glass and made it look like a pose. But Nora was tired. Tired in her bones. Tired in the places insults settle when no one apologizes for them. Slowly, she reached down and slipped off the left heel. The relief was so sudden her eyes almost closed. She removed the right one next and stood in thin stockings on the cold concrete. The chill bit through the fabric, but it felt honest. It felt better than pretending. Roman said nothing. That made it worse somehow. Nora held the shoes by their straps and stepped farther onto the landing, leaving a cautious distance between them. Below, rain had begun to gather in the alley, turning oil stains into dark mirrors. "You humiliated my sister," Nora said. Roman took another drag from the cigarette. "Your sister was already humiliated. I only refused to participate. She was waiting for you." "I know. She dressed for you." "I noticed." Nora's laugh came out small and bitter. "Of course you did." Roman looked at her then, not sharply but fully. It was the kind of attention that made lies feel childish. Not the way she wanted. Nora tightened her grip around the shoes. The cheap straps pressed lines into her fingers. "My father spent months arranging tonight," she said. "Vivian has been practicing that smile since August. He told her which champagne to hold, which side of her face photographs better, how close to stand without looking desperate." Roman's expression did not change. He wasted his time. Nora stared at him. "You say that like you didn't enjoy walking past her. I don't enjoy desperation. It makes people sloppy." The words should have sounded cruel. They did sound cruel, but there was something else beneath them, something cold and practical, as if he were discussing a cracked foundation or bad wiring. Nora turned her face toward the alley. The air smelled like wet brick and cigarette smoke. It was the first clean breath she had taken all night, which said something terrible about the ballroom. "Then why did you do it?" she asked. "Why walk over to me? Why touch my hand in front of half the city's criminals and the other half's donors?" Roman dropped ash over the railing. "Because you were bleeding." It was a scratch. It was still blood. She looked at him. "That cannot be the reason." "No," he said. "It is not the only reason." There it was, the hook beneath the kindness. Nora's stomach tightened. Men like Roman Blake did not rescue women like Nora Whitaker. Men like Roman did not cross crowded rooms because a stranger had a thorn cut on her thumb. He had not become the most feared man in New Orleans by being soft. He had become that way by knowing where to stand when someone else's world started burning. "What do you want?" she asked. Roman smoked in silence for long enough that Nora heard the drip of water from the roof above them. "Your father owes me money." The words did not shock her the way they should have. They landed like confirmation. Nora looked toward the stairwell door, toward the ballroom above, toward the place where Grant Whitaker was probably sweating through his tuxedo and pretending the earth had not opened beneath him. "How much?" she asked. Roman studied her face. "You are not surprised. I handle the warehouse books. I knew we were drowning. I just didn't know who held us under. $520,000. The number hit hard. Nora's hand slipped on the railing. For a second, the alley tilted. $520,000 was not debt. It was a sentence. It was a hand around a throat. It was her father smiling over dinner while the roof cracked above them. She forced herself to breathe. How bad loans. Worse judgment. False invoices. A shipment that disappeared from Pier 11. Then another. Then your father borrowed to hide the first hole, then borrowed again to cover the second. Nora swallowed. Her throat tasted like metal. He told me the bank was pressuring him. The bank is the least dangerous thing pressuring him. Her bare toes curled against the concrete, and Vivian Roman's eyes narrowed slightly. What about her? Nora looked back toward the ballroom. She could almost see her sister inside red silk gleaming under the lights, mouth tight with rage, pride split open in front of everyone. Was she the payment? Roman said nothing. That silence had weight. Nora felt sick. Her father had not brought Vivian to the gala because he believed in romance or opportunity. He had dressed her like an offering. He had placed her in Roman Blake's path and hoped beauty could delay violence. And Nora had been brought along as scenery, as proof of family unity, as a useful shadow. She laughed once, but there was no humor in it. My God. Roman's gaze stayed on her. "Did you not know I knew he was weak?" Nora said. "I did not know he was willing to sell us by category." The cigarette burned low between Roman's fingers. He convinced himself he was saving the family. "Men like my father always do." Something moved through Roman's expression too quick to name. Nora caught it anyway. "You know men like him," she said. "I know desperate men." "No," she said quietly. "You know fathers." The air changed. Roman looked at her with such stillness that Nora understood she had stepped too close to something buried. For one heartbeat, the city below them seemed to quiet. Then he looked away. Careful. The word was not loud. It did not need to be. Nora's pulse kicked. She should have apologized. She should have stepped back. But some reckless part of her had survived the ballroom and wanted to keep surviving by telling the truth. "Careful is how I ended up in that room," she said. "Careful is wearing a rented dress so my father can pretend we're not broke. Careful is letting Vivian speak to me like I'm something stuck to her shoe. Careful is smiling while men decide what women are worth." Roman crushed the cigarette beneath his shoe. "What do you think you are worth?" The question was too direct. Nora opened her mouth, then closed it. No one had ever asked her that as if the answer mattered. At the warehouse, she was worth the invoices she corrected before dawn. To her father, she was worth whatever labor she could give without complaint. To Vivian, she was worth less than a decent mirror. To the men in the ballroom, she had been worth nothing until Roman looked at her. "I don't know," she said finally. Roman stepped closer. Not enough to touch her, enough to make the cold air feel smaller. "That is the first honest answer you have given me." Nora lifted her chin. "I have been honest all night." "No, you have been defensive. There is a difference." She hated that he could hear it, hated that he understood the armor before she had a chance to name it. "Fine," she said. "Then here is honest. I think you walked past Vivian because you wanted to punish my father. I think you picked me because I was the one thing in that room he did not think mattered. I think you enjoyed making him watch me become important for 5 minutes." Roman's face remained unreadable. And now, I am waiting for the knife." His eyes sharpened. "The knife. The cost," Nora said. "There is always a cost. Men like you do not open doors without owning the hallway." For the first time, Roman smiled. It was small, brief, almost tired. "You are less naive than you look." "I look poor. People confuse that with naive." Roman's smile disappeared, but something like approval remained in his eyes. "That is why I crossed the room." Nora went still. Roman moved to the railing again. He rested one hand on the rusted metal and looked down at the alley. "Your sister is beautiful," he said. "That is not rare. Your father is desperate. That is common. Every man in that ballroom was trying to sell me something. Access, loyalty, flesh, silence. Your sister stood under the chandelier like a gift someone forgot to wrap." Nora felt a strange sting on Vivian's behalf, though she did not want to. "And me," Roman looked at her. "You looked like you wanted to burn the building down and still had enough sense to check the exits first. Nora did not know what to do with that, so you liked the view. I trusted it more than the smiles." Rain thickened beyond the landing. Water slipped down the back of Nora's neck, cold against her skin. She shivered before she could stop herself. Roman noticed. Of course he did. He removed his suit jacket and held it out. Nora stared at it. "No. You are cold. I am not taking your jacket. You are shaking. I am standing barefoot in a hotel stairwell after being publicly selected by a crime boss. Shaking seems reasonable." Roman did not move the jacket away. Nora looked at the black wool, then at him. If I take that, does it add interest to my father's debt? No. If I don't take it, will you stand there until I do? Yes. She snatched it from him. The jacket was heavy and warm. It smelled faintly of rain tobacco and something clean beneath both. Nora pulled it around her shoulders and hated how good it felt. Roman looked away before she could feel too seen. A black SUV turned into the alley below headlights, cutting through rain. It stopped near the service door without a horn, without a shout, as if the city had already made room for it. A large man stepped out and opened the rear door. He wore a dark coat and an expression that suggested he had never been surprised in his life. Roman glanced down. That is Harlan. Should I know who that is, no. That is the point. Nora's fingers tightened around the edges of the jacket. I'm not getting in that car. Roman turned toward the stairs. Yes, you are. No, I'm not. He stopped one step down and looked back at her. I am taking you home. I can call a cab. With what phone, Nora's jaw closed. Her phone was in her small purse, which was still inside the ballroom, likely under Vivian's angry heel or in her father's trembling hands. Roman waited. Nora hated him a little for not looking smug. My apartment is above the warehouse, she said. I know. The cold that moved through her had nothing to do with the rain. Of course you do. Roman descended the stairs. Nora followed because the alternative was going back into the ballroom barefoot wrapped in his jacket and letting Vivian see that she had been shaken. The alley smelled like wet garbage and river mud. Rain struck Nora's face the moment she stepped outside. Harlan did not look at her, but his eyes seemed to register everything. Her bare feet, the shoes in her hand, Roman's jacket on her shoulders. He held the door open. Nora looked at Roman. Is this the part where I disappear? No. Would you tell me if it was no? She gave him a hard look. Roman met it without apology. Then he placed one hand lightly against the top of the car door, not touching her, only blocking the rain from pouring directly onto her as she climbed inside. The gesture was small, almost domestic. That made it more dangerous. Nora slid into the back seat. The interior was warm and quiet, sealed away from the storm. Black leather, dark glass, the faint scent of peppermint. When Roman got in beside her, the space seemed to shrink around him. Harlan closed the door. The sound was soft and final. The SUV pulled away from the hotel. Nora watched the St. Aurelia disappear behind a wash of rain. Somewhere inside, Vivian was rebuilding her smile from broken glass. Grant was likely making excuses to men who smelled fear as easily as cologne. Roman sat beside Nora in silence. He did not crowd her. He did not speak. He simply existed there, large and calm and impossible to ignore. After several blocks, warm air began to blow toward Nora's feet. She looked down. Roman had adjusted the vent without looking at her. Stop doing that, she said. Doing what, noticing? His eyes remained on the rain-streaked window. No. The answer was so immediate she almost laughed. Instead, she looked at her hands. The small cut on her thumb had dried. A faint smear of blood marked her skin where his handkerchief had pressed. She remembered the entire ballroom watching him touch her, as if she were not background, not furniture, not a mistake in blue satin. What happens to my father? She asked. Roman leaned back. Tonight, nothing. And tomorrow? That depends on him. On whether he pays? On whether he lies again. Nora closed her eyes briefly. He will. Yes. She turned to him. You sound certain. Your father built his life out of delay. Men like that do not suddenly become honest when the bill arrives. Nora looked away because she knew he was right. The SUV passed through the French Quarter where neon signs bled color across wet pavement. Tourists crowded beneath awnings, laughing too loudly, unaware that power moved past them behind tinted glass. Nora watched a woman in silver heels kiss a man under a balcony while rain ran down her bare arms. For some reason, the sight made her chest ache. "Why not just collect from him?" Nora asked. "Why involve me?" Roman did not answer at once. When he did, his voice was quieter. "Because your father's debt is no longer the most interesting thing about your family." Nora's fingers tightened around the shoes in her lap. "That sounds like a threat. It is an observation. With you, I'm not sure there's a difference." Roman looked at her then. "There is always a difference. Threats are simple. Observations become useful." Nora did not like the word useful. It had followed her all her life dressed as praise. Useful Nora. Reliable Nora. Nora who stayed late. Nora who fixed the order sheets. Nora who took the bus in the rain because Vivian needed the car for a hair appointment. Nora who never asked why love in her family always came with a task attached. "I am not one of your assets," she said. "Not yet." The words were soft. They struck like a match. Nora turned fully toward him. "What does that mean?" Roman reached into his jacket, then paused when Nora stiffened. "Relax. People probably regret relaxing around you. Usually." He pulled out a small cream-colored card and held it between two fingers. It was thick, expensive paper. There was no phone number, no address, no title, only a black embossed letter B in the center. Nora stared at it. "I don't want that." "You have not heard the offer. I doubt the offer improves when delivered by a man who owns my father's debt." Roman placed the card on the seat between them. "My shipping division is leaking money." Nora waited. He continued. "Nearly $3.8 million over 2 quarters. My accountants call it spoilage tariffs, storage corrections, insurance delays. I call it theft. You want me to recommend a better accountant? I want you to look at the ledgers." Nora stared at him as if he had spoken in another language. "I run a floral warehouse. You run the only part of your father's business that still functions. I track roses, lilies, delivery vans, funeral orders, hotel contracts, payroll, and whatever fresh disaster the doc sends us before sunrise. That does not qualify me to audit a criminal empire." Roman's gaze held hers. "It qualifies you better than men who have never opened a container in July and smelled $10,000 dying in the heat." Nora's mouth closed. That was too specific. Too accurate. Roman leaned slightly closer, though his voice stayed calm. "You know perishables. You know inventory. You know what real loss looks like because you have lived inside it. My accountants see columns. You see rot. Outside, the city slid by in streaks of red and gold." Nora reached for the card, despite herself. The paper felt heavy in her hand. "When Monday, 10 in the morning, Blake Tower." She looked at him. "And if I say no," the warmth left his face. Not anger, not cruelty, just absence. "Then your father has until Wednesday to pay $520,000. Nora's stomach dropped. "There it is." Roman said nothing. The knife. The SUV turned onto a narrower street near the river where old brick warehouses leaned against the rain and flickering signs buzzed above locked doors. Nora knew this road, knew every pothole, knew the corner where water gathered so deep it swallowed the curb. Whitaker Floral Imports appeared through the windshield, its green neon sign trembling in the storm. The SUV slowed. Nora looked from the building to Roman. "You said I could leave." "You can. But if I walk away, my father pays." "Yes. And if he can't?" Roman's eyes did not move from hers. "Then men who owe money learn what else they have left." Nora felt anger rise so fast it steadied her. You are not offering me a job. You are putting a gun on the table and calling it paperwork." Roman's voice remained low. "No. If I wanted a gun on the table, you would see one." The car stopped in front of the warehouse. Harlan unlocked the doors. Nora heard the soft click. Roman looked toward the building. A light glowed in the upstairs window of Nora's apartment. Small, yellow, fragile against the rain. "You live above the warehouse," he said. "You already knew that." "Yes. Do you know everything?" "No." The answer surprised her again. He turned back to her. "That is why I need someone who knows how to find what men hide in plain sight." Nora looked at the card in her hand. The black bee seemed to absorb the dim light. She thought of Vivian's voice in the ballroom. "Nobody wants you here." She thought of her father waiting by the entrance for Roman Blake, like salvation came in a black suit. She thought of the warehouse below her apartment of buckets catching leaks in the ceiling of funeral roses that arrived bruised because Grant had chosen a cheaper carrier of invoices she had massaged until creditors gave them one more week. She thought of being useful. She thought of being seen. Those two things felt dangerously close in Roman's world. "I am not promising you anything," she said. Roman's mouth curved barely. "No. You are deciding whether to survive honestly." Nora gave him a cold look. "I don't need philosophy from a man who collects debts with bodyguards. Then take practicality. Be on time." Nora reached for the door handle and paused. His jacket was still around her shoulders. She pulled it off and handed it back. Roman did not take it at first. "Keep it." "No. It is raining. I've been rained on before." Their eyes held. Then Roman accepted the jacket. His fingers brushed hers for half a second. The contact was brief, but it moved through her like the echo of something she did not want to name. Nora opened the door. Cold rain rushed in, carrying the smell of wet pavement and river mud. She stepped out, barefoot shoes in one hand, card in the other. Before she closed the door, Roman spoke. "Nora." She looked back. In the dark cabin, his face was half shadow, half streetlight. "Do not let your father talk you out of what you already know." Her throat tightened. "What do I know? That he brought your sister to be chosen, and brought you because he thought no one would look twice." Nora stood in the rain. Roman's eyes did not release her. He was wrong. For one breath, neither of them moved. Then Nora shut the door. The SUV pulled away without hurry, its red taillights bleeding into the wet street until the rain swallowed them. Nora stood beneath the flickering floral sign soaked through, holding the cream-colored card so tightly it bent beneath her fingers. Above her, her apartment waited with its old radiator-thin walls and unpaid bills stacked on the kitchen table. Behind her, the ballroom was already becoming rumor. In front of her, Monday morning waited in black ink. Nora climbed the narrow stairs to her apartment, each step cold beneath her feet. At the door, she looked once more at the card in her hand. The embossed B pressed into her thumb like a bruise. Inside the phone was already ringing. Nora let the phone ring until the sound filled the apartment like a warning bell. She stood just inside the door, soaked from the rain, still holding Roman Blake's card in her fist. Water dripped from the ends of her hair and fell onto the cracked linoleum floor. Her shoes dangled from one hand. Her feet were numb. Her chest felt too tight, as if the rented dress had followed her inside and kept squeezing long after she had taken her first real breath. The phone kept ringing. She knew who it was. Her father never called twice unless money was involved. Vivian never called unless she wanted blood. Nora crossed the room slowly, leaving wet footprints behind her. Her apartment above the warehouse was small with low ceilings. Old pipes, a couch she had bought from a church basement sale, and stacks of invoices covering the kitchen table. A single lamp glowed near the window, turning the rain against the glass into trembling silver lines. She picked up the phone. For half a second there was only breathing. Then Grant Whitaker's voice came through thin and sharp with panic. "What did you do?" Nora closed her eyes. "Not are you safe. Not where are you. Not did he hurt you. What did you do?" She looked down at the card in her hand. The black letter B had left a pale mark in her palm. "I went home," she said. "That is not what I asked." Behind him, Nora heard Vivian's voice, bright and furious, like glass breaking in another room. "She planned it. I told you she planned it." Nora laughed once under her breath. She could not help it. Grant snapped, "This is not funny." "No," Nora said. "It really is not. Roman Blake walked out of that ballroom with you in front of everyone. Do you understand what that looked like?" Nora opened her eyes and stared at the rain. It looked like someone finally interrupted Vivian. A silence followed. Then Vivian grabbed the phone. "You cheap little liar." Nora's fingers tightened around the receiver. Vivian's voice dropped low, poisonous and shaking. "You think he chose you? He humiliated me to punish Daddy. That is all. You were a prop." Nora looked at the rented dress now lying in a pale heap near the door. The hem was wet and dirty. It looked sadder than it had in the ballroom. "Maybe," Nora said. The answer seemed to throw Vivian off. "What?" "Maybe I was a prop," Nora said. "That would still make me more useful than your performance tonight." Vivian inhaled sharply. "You ungrateful little nobody." There it was again. The old song, the family hymn, "Nobody." Nora was tired of hearing it. "Put Dad back on." Vivian hissed something Nora did not care enough to understand. Then the receiver shifted. Grant came back on. His voice was lower now. "What did he say to you?" Nora walked to the window. From here she could see the dark shape of the warehouse roof below the loading bay doors, the alley where delivery trucks came before sunrise. "He said you owe him $520,000. Grant made a sound like air leaving a punctured tire. "So he told you?" "Yes." "Nora, listen to me. You do not understand men like him." "No," she said. "But I am beginning to understand men like you." He did not answer. That silence hurt more than the insults. Nora looked at her reflection in the window. Wet hair, pale face, old apartment, blood dried near her thumb. She looked exhausted, but not broken. Not tonight. "He wants me at Blake Tower on Monday," she said. Grant's breath caught. "Why, to look at ledgers?" "No." The word came too fast. Nora turned away from the window. "No. You stay away from him. You hear me? Whatever he said, whatever he offered you, you do not go near that man again." Something cold and steady opened inside Nora. "You sold Vivian to him in a red dress. I did no such thing. You positioned her like merchandise under a chandelier. I was trying to save this family. You were trying to save yourself." Grant's voice cracked. "You think you are brave because he noticed you for one night. Roman Blake notices things before he breaks them." Nora looked again at the card. Then maybe he should notice the books. She hung up before her father could answer. The apartment fell quiet except for the rain and the old radiator knocking in the corner. Nora stood there for a long moment listening to her own breathing. Then she crossed to the door, picked up the rented dress, and carried it to the bathroom. She peeled herself out of it, slowly wincing as the zipper caught her skin. Red marks striped her ribs where the bodice had bitten into her all night. She dropped the dress into the tub. For a while, she just stared at it. Roman's voice moved through her memory. "Do not wear that dress again." Nora turned on the shower and stepped beneath the water before it warmed. Cold ran over her shoulders, down her back, along the places where satin and shame had pressed into her skin. She braced both hands against the tile and let the night slide off her in pieces. Vivian's whisper. "Nobody wants you here." Roman's hand around hers. "You are bleeding." Grant's panic. "What did you do?" The card waited on the sink when she stepped out. It looked heavier than paper had any right to look. Nora slept 3 hours. By Monday morning, the rain had not stopped. It came down hard over New Orleans, blurring the river, darkening the brick, turning the streets into long black mirrors. Nora stood at the bus stop in a thrift store blazer, black slacks, and practical loafers with thick soles. Her hair was pulled back in a low knot. The cut on her thumb had scabbed over again. She had chosen her clothes carefully. Not pretty, not soft, not desperate. Clothes she could work in, clothes she could run in if she had to. The bus arrived 15 minutes late, coughing diesel smoke into the wet morning. Nora climbed on and took a seat near the back. Nobody looked at her twice. That was familiar enough to feel almost comforting. Blake Tower rose near the riverfront like a blade of black glass. It did not have the old beauty of the St. Aurelia Hotel. It did not need beauty. It had height money and the kind of silence that made people lower their voices before entering. Nora stood outside beneath the awning and looked up. A corporate tower, a Mafia kingdom, a building full of men who probably used words like logistics and acquisition when they meant control. She stepped through the revolving doors. Cold air hit her first. Then the smell of polished stone, lemon cleaner, expensive coffee, and money that had never been handled by tired hands. The lobby was wide and white with marble floors so clean Nora could see the shape of herself in them. Security guards stood near the elevators in dark suits. Not mall security, not bored men checking badges. These men had shoulders like doors and eyes that moved constantly. The receptionist looked up from behind a pale stone desk. Her smile was smooth, professional, and dead on arrival. "May I help you?" Nora could feel the woman measuring her. The old loafers, the cheap blazer, the damp hair, the lack of jewelry, the absence of belonging. "I have an appointment," Nora said, with whom Nora took the card from her pocket and placed it on the desk. The receptionist looked down. Everything in her face changed, not dramatically, not enough for anyone across the lobby to notice. But Nora saw the blood drain from her smile, saw her hand still over the keyboard, saw her eyes flick once toward the guards. "Yes, Miss Whitaker," the receptionist said, though Nora had not given her name. "Mr. Blake is expecting you." Of course he was. A guard appeared beside Nora without sound. "This way." He led her past the public elevators to a frosted glass partition. Behind it waited a private elevator with no visible buttons except a small black panel. The guard pressed his thumb to it. The doors opened. Nora stepped inside alone. The doors closed. The elevator rose so smoothly her stomach took a second to realize the floor was moving. There was no music, no mirror, no floor numbers, just dark walls and her own reflection staring back at her from brushed steel. She looked smaller than she felt. That annoyed her. She straightened her shoulders. The doors opened onto the top floor. The first thing Nora noticed was the quiet. Not empty quiet. Controlled quiet. The kind made by thick carpets, closed doors, and people paid enough to fear mistakes. A woman in a charcoal suit waited near the elevator. "Miss Whitaker." Nora stepped out. The woman did not offer a handshake. She turned and walked, expecting Nora to follow. They passed a long corridor lined with smoked glass offices. Behind the glass, men and women worked at screens, spoke into headsets, reviewed files, moved like pieces in a machine that had no visible engine. At the end of the corridor stood double doors made of dark wood. The woman opened one. Nora entered Roman Blake's office. It was larger than her entire apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over the Mississippi River. Rain streaked the glass. Far below, cargo ships crawled along the water, their containers stacked like colored coffins. The office itself was all dark wood steel leather and shadow. Nothing bright, nothing wasted. Roman stood behind a wide desk reading from a folder. He wore a white dress shirt with the sleeves rolled to his forearms. The collar was open at the throat. A pair of silver reading glasses rested low on his nose. Scars marked his arms, pale lines against tanned skin. He did not look up. You are 4 minutes early. Nora stopped 10 feet from the desk. The bus was less cruel than usual. Roman signed a document with a black pen, closed the folder, then looked at her. His eyes moved over her outfit. Not with heat, with assessment. Sensible shoes, he said. Nora lifted her chin. I dressed for walking out. A brief stillness. Then the corner of his mouth moved. Good. The answer did something strange to the room. It did not soften him. Nothing softened Roman Blake. But it shifted the air around him just enough for Nora to remember the way he had angled his hand over the car door to keep rain off her face. She did not want to remember that. Roman removed his glasses and set them on the desk. Coffee? No. Water? No. You should take the water. I said no. He watched her for a second, then walked to a side table, poured a glass of water, and set it on the smaller conference table near the windows. Then ignore it. Nora hated that she was thirsty. Roman lifted 3 leather-bound ledgers from a cabinet and carried them to the table. They landed with a heavy sound. Beside them, he placed a locked tablet and a folder thick with printed manifests. These are copies, he said. The originals are in a room you do not get access to yet. Yet earn it. Nora looked at the ledgers. What exactly am I looking for? $3.8 million missing across 6 months. Nora stared at him. That is not a rounding error. No. What did your accountant say? Tariffs, port fees, spoilage, insurance corrections, storage overages, damaged goods, market fluctuations. That is a lot of excuses. Yes. Why not fire them? Because if I fire every liar before I know who pays them, I lose the trail. Nora looked up. He said it like a man discussing weather. Calm, practical, patient. That patience scared her more than shouting would have. She moved to the table but did not sit yet. If I find a name, she said, what happens? Roman's face gave her nothing. That depends on the name. And the amount. Yes. And your mood. His eyes narrowed slightly. My mood is not a legal system. No, Nora said. But I doubt your legal system is very legal. For a moment only the rain spoke. Then Roman pulled out a chair. Sit down, Nora. The sound of her name and his voice moved across her skin before she could stop it. She sat. Roman remained standing. The businesses in these books are legitimate enough to survive attention. Food imports, textiles, machinery parts, flowers, seafood, olive oil, citrus. The kind of things people need and never think about once they reach a table. And the illegitimate money washed through service contracts, warehousing fees, cash vendors, and transportation adjustments. Nora opened the first ledger. The smell of paper and ink rose up. Familiar. Safer than Roman. Safer than the office. Safer than the river below. What makes you think the leak is in shipping? Roman walked to the window. Because men steal where they have cover. At the docks, everything moves. Containers, crews, cash, paperwork. Weather creates delays. Heat ruins food. Refrigeration fails. Inspectors get tired. Nobody questions loss when loss is expected. Nora looked down at the first page. He was right. She hated that too. For the next hour, Roman left her alone. Mostly. He worked at his desk, took calls in a low voice, signed papers, read reports. Sometimes he spoke Italian. Sometimes he spoke so quietly Nora could not catch the words. Once a man entered, handed him a sealed envelope, and left without looking at her. Nora tried not to wonder if the envelope contained money photographs or someone's last mistake. She focused on the ledgers. At first glance, the books were beautiful. Too beautiful. Clean columns, perfect totals, neat losses. Every spoiled shipment documented. Every adjustment explained. Every claim supported by a form. The kind of books a dishonest man prepared for an honest auditor. Nora flipped back, then forward, then back again. She pulled the tablet closer. It required a code. Roman spoke from across the room. 7113. She entered it. The screen opened to scanned dock receipts, cooling unit logs, customs forms, and insurance filings. She began cross-checking dates. The rain beat against the windows. Time changed shape. Nora forgot the office, forgot Roman, forgot her father Vivian, the gala, the dress in the bathtub. Numbers had a language, and unlike people they hated pretending for too long. A lie could dress itself in clean formatting, but it still had weight. It still bent the page around it. The citrus shipments caught her eye first. 2,000 crates marked spoiled after a refrigeration problem aboard the vessel Maribel Grace. Insurance claim filed within 6 hours of dock arrival. Loss approved by internal review the same day. Too fast. Nora checked the maintenance logs. The refrigeration system had been serviced 4 days before departure. She opened the arrival photos. The container seals were intact. She checked the weight ticket. Her pencil stopped moving. The cargo weight was too high for a shipment that had supposedly lost 20% of its product to spoilage. She wrote a note. Then she found another one. Olive oil from Sicily. Damaged pallet claim. But the warehouse intake weight matched the original manifest. Seafood from Maine. Delay claim. But fuel logs showed no delay. Orchids from Colombia. 40% loss. Refrigeration stable. Nora felt the old warehouse part of her brain wake up fully. This was not chaos. This was design. A glass appeared near her hand. Water. She looked up. Roman stood beside the table. You're frowning. I usually do that when someone is lying badly. His gaze dropped to her notes. Who I do not know yet. But you found something. I found the shape of something. Roman pulled out the chair across from her and sat. The movement surprised her. Men like him did not sit across from warehouse managers as if they were equals. They stood. They loomed. They made other people look up. Roman sat and waited. Nora turned the ledger toward him. These books are too clean. That is your finding. That is my first finding. Real shipping is messy. Not criminal messy. Human messy. Someone mislabels a pallet. Someone drops a crate. Someone writes 7 instead of 1. Rain delays loading. Heat damages flowers. Rats get into grain. Drivers lie about traffic. Honest books have bruises. Roman looked at the page. These have explanations. These have alibis, Nora said. There is a difference. His eyes lifted to hers. Something in them sharpened. Nora tapped the citrus line with her pencil. This shipment claims spoilage from refrigeration failure. But the maintenance log says the unit was serviced before departure. Arrival photos show no damage. Weight ticket is too high for that much loss. So either physics got sentimental or the product did not spoil. Roman leaned back slowly. Where did it go? Nora flipped to the insurance paperwork. That is the question. His expression did not change, but the room seemed to grow colder around him. Nora looked back at the ledger to avoid looking at his face. I need dock camera logs, vendor payment records, any off-site storage contracts, also fuel receipts for trucks assigned to these shipments. Roman rose. You will have them. Today. He looked almost amused. Now. He crossed to his desk, picked up the phone, and spoke 4 words into it. Bring the secondary files. Then he hung up. Nora stared at him. That was it. Yes. No extension, no department, no please. Roman returned to the table. People who require please should not work for me. That sounds lonely. He paused. The comment had escaped her before she could decide whether it was wise. Roman looked at her for a moment that stretched too long. Then he said, It is efficient. Nora looked back down. Those are not the same thing. No, he said. They are not. The door opened 15 seconds later. A man brought in 2 more boxes and placed them beside Nora's chair. He did not speak. He did not look curious. When he left the door shut with a soft click, Nora opened the first box. Fuel receipts, truck logs, temporary storage invoices. She almost smiled. This was a different kind of battlefield, but the weapons were familiar. For hours she worked. Roman stayed in the room, sometimes at his desk, sometimes near the windows, sometimes across from her, reading silently while she sorted papers into piles only she understood. The city outside dimmed beneath the storm. The morning became afternoon without permission. At some point, Nora reached for the water and drank half the glass. Roman did not comment. She appreciated that more than she wanted to. By late afternoon, her eyes burned. Her neck ached. Her pencil had left a gray stain along the side of her index finger. She had built 3 piles on the table. Legitimate loss, possible fraud. Rot. Roman came to stand beside her. He looked at the 3rd pile. Rot. That is what you called it. I said you could see rot. Nora circled another invoice. I can. He was quiet. She felt him watching her, and this time she did not shrink from it. These are not random, she said. Whoever is doing this knows which products can disappear without panic. Perishables. Flowers, fruit, fish. Things people expect to die if timing goes wrong. Roman's jaw tightened. Someone at the docks. Someone with authority at the docks, Nora said. A driver cannot make paperwork this clean. A warehouse clerk cannot approve insurance this fast. This is not theft by opportunity. This is theft by permission. Roman's silence deepened. Nora looked up at him. You already suspected that. Yes. But you needed the numbers to say it. I needed someone outside my men to say it. For the first time, Nora understood the real danger. It was not just that money was missing. It was that Roman did not know which of his own people had taken it. A man like him could survive enemies. Enemies stood in front of you. Betrayal sat at your table and asked for salt. Nora looked back at the documents. There is a repeating signature, she said. Roman's eyes moved to the page. She covered it with her hand before he could read it. His gaze returned to her face. Nora's heart beat once hard. I need to verify before I give you a name. You are hiding information from me. I am refusing to be careless. The air tightened. Roman stepped closer. Nora. Her name sounded different now. Not soft. Not warning exactly. Something between. She held his stare. If I point at the wrong man in your world, does he get an apology or a grave? Roman said nothing. That is what I thought. His eyes stayed on hers for a long moment. Then he stepped back. Verify it. Nora exhaled slowly. He walked away. She uncovered the page and looked again at the signature. Not once. Not twice. Again and again on the shipments that should have rotted but had not. Her pencil hovered above the name. She did not circle it yet. Outside the windows, the Mississippi moved dark and steady beneath the rain, carrying secrets toward the Gulf. Nora turned to the next file, then the next, following the same handwriting through fruit flowers, seafood, and oil. With every page, the office seemed to grow quieter. At the bottom of the final manifest, the signature waited for her again. This time there was no mistake. Nora placed her pencil down carefully. Across the room, Roman looked up. She did not speak right away. The name on the page had become heavier than ink. The name sat at the bottom of the manifest like it had weight. Cole Maddox. Nora stared at the signature until the letters began to blur. The same clean slant. The same hard pressure at the end of each stroke. The same name approving losses that did not behave like losses spoilage that looked too organized. Damage claims filed before anyone could have inspected the damage. Across the room, Roman Blake stood from his desk. He did not rush. Men like him did not rush unless something had already gone terribly wrong. Nora. She looked up. The office had darkened while she worked. Rain pressed against the windows in long silver streaks, turning the Mississippi beyond the glass into a moving sheet of black metal. The lights inside the office were low now, warm against the dark wood and deep shadows. Roman's face was half lit, half hidden. "You found the name," he said. Nora slid the manifest away from her hand. "I found the same signature on 6 flagged shipments." Roman came closer. His steps made almost no sound on the thick rug, but Nora still felt each one. He stopped beside her chair and looked down at the ledger. For the first time since she had entered Blake Tower, his stillness cracked. It was not visible to anyone who did not know how to read small things. Nora did. She read inventory shortages, tired drivers, lying vendors, wilted flowers. She read the slight tightening in Roman's jaw, the way his fingers curled once then relaxed, the way his eyes turned colder without becoming wider. He recognized the name before he looked. "You said you needed to verify," he said. "I did." And Nora pushed 3 pages toward him. Each one carried her pencil marks. Timestamps, shipment numbers, refrigeration logs, weight slips, and insurance filings. "The pattern is consistent," she said. "Citrus from Sicily, orchids from Colombia, olive oil from Spain, seafood from Maine, Colombian roses." Every flagged loss passed through the river docks under the same approval chain. Roman's eyes did not leave the page. "Coal." His voice changed when he said it. It dropped lower, but not louder. The name came out quiet, almost intimate, like something dragged from an old wound. Nora watched him. "You trusted him." Roman's gaze moved to the window. "I trusted the structure around him. That is not the same thing." "No." The admission was flat, but Nora heard the damage beneath it. Roman did not look heartbroken. That would have been too human, too easy. He looked like a man calculating how deep the crack ran beneath a building he had been standing in for years. Nora turned back to the files because watching him made her feel like she had stepped into a room where she was not meant to see the walls bleed. "The theft is not loud," she said. "That is why your accountants missed it, or pretended to miss it." Roman looked at her then. "Explain." Nora took a breath and gathered the pages into a clean order. Her headache pulsed behind her eyes, but the work steadied her. Numbers were safer than the man standing beside her. Numbers did not smell like tobacco and rain. Numbers did not cross ballrooms and change a woman's life with one look. She tapped the first manifest. "This shipment says 10,000 crates of oranges arrived at Pier 11. 2,200 were marked spoiled because of a refrigeration malfunction. Your insurance claim covered the loss. The internal review approved it the same day. The books balanced." Roman waited. But the cooling unit was serviced 4 days before the ship left Palermo. The temperature log stayed within safe range the entire route. No spike, no outage, no delay. The arrival photos show sealed containers. The weight ticket from the port says the load was nearly complete. "Nearly," Roman said. "Yes. Enough missing to make the lie profitable, not enough missing to make the paperwork scream." His eyes stayed on her face. "So the oranges arrived?" "They arrived," Nora said. "Then they disappeared before the official warehouse intake." Roman's jaw worked once. She turned another page. "Same method here. Orchids from Colombia. 40% loss." That number is ridiculous, because orchids are fragile, but they are not suicidal. If refrigeration failed badly enough to kill 40%, the rest would show stress. Browning, stem collapse, mold. Your intake photos show clean blooms, expensive ones. Roman leaned closer. Nora became aware of the heat of him near her shoulder and forced herself to keep speaking. Someone marked them as dead before anyone who understood flowers could see them alive. And sold them. Off-book, Nora said. Cash buyers, private florists, event wholesalers, maybe luxury hotels, the kind of buyers who do not ask questions if the price is low and the product is good. Roman walked to the window and stared out at the river. And the paperwork, Cole signed the spoilage approval. Then the insurance claim covered the false loss. Your books showed damage. Your real cargo moved elsewhere. Everyone got paid except you. A silence settled over the office. Nora had heard many kinds of silence in her life. The silence after Vivian cut her down at dinner and everyone pretended not to hear. The silence of the warehouse at 3 a.m. when the coolers hummed and bills waited unpaid. The silence in the ballroom when Roman walked toward her. This silence was different. It had teeth. Roman turned. How much? Nora looked at her notes. From the shipments I checked at least 900,000. But the pattern extends beyond what you gave me. If Cole has used the same method across 6 months, your missing 3.8 million makes sense. Roman's eyes darkened. And if he has done it longer, Nora did not answer. She did not have to. Roman moved to his desk and picked up his phone. The gesture sent a chill through her. Wait, Nora said. Roman paused with the phone in his hand. What are you doing? Correcting the problem. Her stomach tightened. That is not an answer. It is the only one that matters. Nora stood too quickly. The chair scraped against the floor. It matters to me. Roman looked at her across the office, expression unreadable. You were asked to find the leak. I found numbers, she said. Not a body. Roman's eyes held hers. In my world, those are often connected. Then your world is sick. Yes. The word struck her harder than denial would have. No defense, no polished explanation, no lie about honor or necessity. Just yes. Nora felt the room tilt again, but this time it was not from fear. It was from understanding. Roman Blake knew exactly what he was. He did not soften the edges. He did not dress the violence in noble language. That almost made it worse. She stepped away from the table. I do not want to be part of this. Roman set the phone down without dialing. You already are. No. Her voice came out sharper than she intended. You dragged me here because you had leverage over my father. You put ledgers in front of me and asked me to find a thief. Fine, I did that. But I did not agree to watch what happens when a name leaves my mouth. Roman came around the desk slowly. Nora's hands curled at her sides. He stopped several feet away, close enough that his presence filled the space, far enough that she understood he had chosen not to crowd her. You think looking away keeps you clean? I think there is a difference between finding the truth and pulling the trigger. There is, Roman said. But sometimes one points to the other. Nora swallowed. Rain beat harder against the glass. Down below, the river kept moving indifferent and black. Did he matter to you? She asked. Roman's expression sharpened. Cole. The name hung between them. Roman looked past her toward the ledgers. He was useful. That is not what I asked. For a moment she thought he would warn her again, tell her to be careful, remind her whose office she stood in. Instead, he looked back at her. I pulled him out of a street crew when he was 23. He was smart, hungry, violent in ways that could be directed. I gave him docs when older men thought he only deserved a gun and a corner. Nora's voice softened before she could stop it. And he betrayed you. Roman's face did not change. Yes, there it was again. the clean brutality of truth. Nora looked at the papers on the table. The signature, the numbers, the neat little lies. He knew you trusted him. Yes, that is why it worked. Roman's gaze settled on her. You understand betrayal. Nora almost laughed. The sound caught in her throat. I understand being useful until I become inconvenient. Something passed through his eyes. Not pity. She would have hated pity. Recognition. The kind that did not comfort because it suggested he knew the shape of the wound from the inside. He stepped closer, slower this time. Nora. She looked up. His voice had changed again. Quieter now. Less command. More gravity. You found what men in my organization hid from me. That has value. I know. No, he said. You do not. The words should have sounded arrogant. Maybe they were. But the way he said them made her chest tighten. He looked down at her hands. She realized they were shaking. She folded them together, but it was too late. He had seen. Roman lifted his hand, then stopped before touching her. Nora noticed that too. Last night in the ballroom, he had taken her hand like the room had no right to object. Tonight he waited. The difference unsettled her. I am not fragile, she said. I did not say you were. You looked like you were about to. I looked like you were about to fall over. That is different. Barely. Despite herself, the corner of Nora's mouth moved. It vanished quickly. Roman saw it anyway. For half a second, the office held something that did not belong with ledgers and betrayal. Something dangerous because it was almost gentle. Then the phone on Roman's desk lit up. Neither of them moved. The screen glowed in the dimness. Roman's eyes shifted toward it. Nora felt the air close. Do not bring him here, she said. Roman looked back at her. He is already being brought. Her mouth went dry. You called before I stopped you. I sent for him when you said his name the first time. Nora stared at him. When your face changed. She took a step back. You knew before I confirmed it. I knew you had found someone important, and you let me keep working. I needed to know whether the numbers would hold. Anger flared hot through her fear. You used my reaction. I use everything. The sentence was cold, honest, unforgivable. Nora turned away from him and gripped the edge of the table. The glass was cool beneath her palms. You make it very hard to remember you did not lock the car door. Roman said nothing. She heard him move behind her, not close enough to touch. The door was unlocked, then he said, It is unlocked now. Nora looked toward the office doors. She could leave. Maybe. She could walk past the silent assistants, take the private elevator down, cross the lobby, under the eyes of armed men step into the rain, and return to the warehouse where her father's debt waited like a loaded gun. The choice was there. So was the trap beneath it. You are very good at making cages without bars, she said. Roman's voice came from behind her. I am good at seeing what people will not walk away from. Nora closed her eyes. Her father, the warehouse employees who depended on the business, the truth in the ledgers, the part of her that wanted to know how deep the rot went, the part of her that hated Roman for noticing her and hated herself more for needing to be noticed. The private elevator chimed. The sound cut through the room like a blade. Nora turned. Roman's face emptied. Not hardened. Emptied. Whatever almost human thing had existed between them disappeared behind the man the city feared. The elevator doors opened. Two men stepped out first, both in dark coats damp from rain. Between them came Cole Maddox. He was taller than Nora expected, broad through the shoulders, with sandy brown hair plastered to his forehead and a split at the corner of his mouth. His expensive gray suit was wet and muddy at the knees. One of his eyes was beginning to swell. He looked furious until he saw Roman. Then he looked afraid, only for a second. But Nora saw it. Roman walked toward him unhurried. Cole tried to straighten despite the hands gripping his arms. "Boss," he said, voice rough. "I do not know what kind of mistake this is, but your boys grabbed me outside Antoine's like I was some street rat." Roman stopped in front of him. "Were you eating?" Cole blinked. "What?" "At Antoine's." "Were you eating?" Cole's confusion flickered. "Yeah, I was having dinner with Louis and Polly." "You can call them. They will tell you." Roman nodded once. "What did you order?" The question was so strange that even Nora stared. Cole licked blood from his lip. "Redfish, I think." "Roman." "What is this?" Roman looked toward the table. Nora knew what he wanted. Her body resisted before her mind did. She did not want to bring the ledger over. She did not want to make the paper into a weapon with her own hands. Roman did not ask again. He simply waited. Nora picked up the manifest. Her legs felt stiff as she walked across the office. Cole's eyes found her then. He looked her over in one fast, contemptuous sweep. Cheap blazer, tired face, pencil-stained fingers. His mouth twisted. "Who the hell is this?" Roman held out his hand. Nora placed the manifest in it. His fingers brushed hers. This time the contact felt like a signature. Roman turned the page toward Cole. "Orchids from Colombia. 40% spoilage. Approved by you." Cole stared, then scoffed. "I sign hundreds of those." "Yes." Roman flipped to another page. "Citrus from Sicily. 22% spoilage. Approved by you." Cole's jaw shifted. "Bad season. Seafood from Maine. Delay claim. Approved by you." Port was backed up. "Olive oil from Spain. Damaged pallets. Approved by you." Cole's eyes moved too quickly now. Nora saw it. The fear was back. Roman saw it too. Cole forced a laugh. "You dragged me up here over paperwork." Roman looked at Nora. "Tell him." Nora's throat tightened. Cole followed Roman's gaze to her and smiled with sudden cruelty. "Oh, I see. This is about Whitaker." Nora went still. Roman's eyes narrowed. Cole's smile widened bloody at one edge. "Grant's little warehouse girl. That is who you have reading doc books now." Nora felt the insult land, but not the way he intended. Warehouse girl. Yes, she was. And that was exactly why she had seen what men like Cole thought they could hide. She stepped closer. "You used perishables because they die quietly," she said. Cole's smile faltered. Nora held his gaze. "You marked live cargo as spoiled, filed fast insurance claims, diverted product before intake, sold it through cash buyers, and let the books bury the smell. You did it with citrus first because loss rates are easy to explain. Then flowers because nobody in Roman's office knew enough to question how orchids behave in stable refrigeration." Cole stared at her. Nora's voice steadied. "But I do." The office went silent. Roman watched her from the side, his face unreadable. Nora continued. "You got greedy. 40% loss on premium orchids is not unfortunate. It is theatrical. The cooling logs do not support it. The weight slips do not support it. The arrival photos do not support it. Your own signature is on every approval that matters." Cole's breathing changed. He looked at Roman. "Boss, come on. She does not know what she is talking about." Roman said nothing. That silence did more damage than rage. Cole's voice rose. "She is Grant Whitaker's daughter. You know Grant. He would sell his own shadow for a loan. You think she is clean?" Nora's pulse jumped. Roman's eyes sharpened. Cole saw it and lunged for the opening. Ask her what her father stored for me. Ask her about the overflow space behind Whitaker Floral. Ask her how many of my trucks had keys to that loading bay. The room shifted beneath Nora's feet. Her father's voice echoed in her memory. You stay away from him. Not fear for her, fear of what she might find. Nora looked at Roman. You knew. Roman did not answer fast enough. The truth entered the room before his words did. I suspected, he said. Nora felt something inside her go cold and clean. You suspected my father was connected to this and you did not tell me. You needed to see the numbers first. No, she said, voice shaking now. You needed me to find them before I knew how much of my own life was buried inside them. Roman's face remained still, but his eyes changed. Cole laughed, breathless and ugly. She is smarter than she looks. Roman turned his head toward him. Cole stopped laughing. Nora could hear her own heartbeat. The ledger in Roman's hand. Cole's blood on his lip. The rain on the glass. Her father's debt. Vivian's red dress. The warehouse keys. The loading bay doors below her apartment. All of it connected. All of it had been connected before Roman crossed the ballroom. Nora stepped back from both men. I need air, she said. No one moved. Roman's voice was quiet. Nora. She looked at him. For the first time that day, she did not feel small in his office. She felt furious enough to fill it. You brought me here to find rot, she said. Do not look surprised because it touched my hands. Cole shifted between the guards. Roman looked at his men. Take him to the holding room. Cole's face drained. Roman. The guards tightened their grip. No, Nora said. Roman's eyes returned to her. She hated how fast they did. Not here, she said. Cole stared at her like she had lost her mind. Nora kept her eyes on Roman. I know what he did. I know you are going to deal with it. I am not naive enough to pretend otherwise, but not here. Not because I handed you a page, not in front of me. Roman said nothing. The old Roman, the one from every whispered story in New Orleans, would have ignored her. The man in the ballroom would have taken what he wanted and let everyone watch. The man in front of her now studied her as if her refusal was another kind of number, another pattern he had not expected but wanted to understand. Cole made the mistake of speaking. You going soft for the flower girl. Roman moved so fast Nora barely saw it. He did not strike Cole. He did not need to. He stepped close enough that Cole's words died in his throat. Do not say another word about her. Cole swallowed. Roman held his stare for a long moment, then looked at the guards. Take him downstairs. The guards dragged Cole toward the elevator. His control broke near the doors. Roman, listen to me. It was not just me. You think this stops with flowers? You think Grant was the only one with keys? Nora's breath caught. Roman's face did not move. The elevator doors opened. Cole twisted against the men holding him, eyes wild now. You are missing the old money, Roman. Ask her about her mother. Nora went completely still. The doors closed before she could speak. The soft chime faded into the walls. For a moment, the office held only Rain River light and the sound of Nora trying to breathe. Roman stood between her and the elevator, silent as stone. Nora looked at him. My mother has been dead for 15 years. Roman did not answer. The silence was no longer empty. It was full of things he knew. Nora kept staring at Roman, waiting for him to say the one thing that would make the floor steady again. That Cole Maddox was lying. That her mother's name had been thrown into the room like a dirty trick. That Evelyn Whitaker had nothing to do with Roman Blake, his docks, his money, his dead-eyed men, or the old blood beneath New Orleans. Roman said none of those things. He stood near the elevator with the rain behind him, his face cut into shadow and amber office light. He looked less like a man caught in a lie than a man deciding which truth would do the least damage. Nora hated him for that. She hated the carefulness of it. She hated the fact that he had answers arranged somewhere behind his eyes, locked away until they became useful. "My mother died when I was 13, Nora said. Her voice sounded too calm, too thin. Roman did not move. "I know." The words were quiet, but they struck harder than shouting. Nora's fingers curled against her palms. "You know? Yes, of course you do." She laughed once, and the sound frightened her because there was no humor inside it, only pressure, only years of being told half-truths by people who needed her useful, not informed. She turned toward the conference table. The ledgers lay open beneath the warm light pages marked with her pencil numbers circled like wounds. Cole's signature still sat there, black and smug at the bottom of the Orchid Manifest. A few hours ago, those pages had been a puzzle. Now they looked like a graveyard. Roman came a step closer. "Nora, do not." He stopped. Good. She needed him to stop. She needed one man in her life to hear a boundary and obey it before she had to bleed to prove she meant it. Outside the windows, lightning flickered over the river. For one white second, the ships below appeared in hard outlined steel containers, stacked high, moving through rain like secrets with engines. "My father was involved," Nora said. Roman did not answer. He let Cole's trucks use my loading bay. Still nothing. He let stolen cargo pass through the warehouse I kept alive with late nights and overdraft notices and cheap coffee. Roman's jaw tightened. "I believe so." "You believe so?" Her voice sharpened. "You walked into that ballroom already knowing my father was tied to your missing money. I suspected a connection. You suspected enough to know where I lived, enough to know I handled the books, enough to know I would see what your accountants missed." "Yes." Nora looked at him then. It would have been easier if he had looked smug. Easier if he had worn cruelty plainly. Instead, he looked steady, hard. A man who had made a calculation and disliked none of the math enough to change it. "You did not choose me because I was honest," she said. Roman's eyes held hers. "I did." "No. You chose me because I was useful. I chose you because you were both." That answer landed somewhere deep and ugly. Useful, honest, seen, used. In Roman's mouth, the words were different weights on the same chain. Nora walked to the window and pressed one hand against the cold glass. Far below, headlights slid along the wet streets. People moved through the city with umbrellas and collars pulled high, unaware that, on the top floor of Blake Tower, a woman in old loafers was learning her whole life had been built over a trapdoor. "Tell me about my mother," she said. Roman's silence answered first. Nora turned. "Tell me." His expression changed slightly. Not fear, not guilt exactly, but a door opening behind a wall. "Not here." Nora stared at him. "You do not get to do that." His eyes narrowed. "Do what hold my family's secrets like they are another one of your assets." Something dark moved through his face. "Your mother is not an asset to me." Then why did Cole say her name? Roman's gaze went to the elevator, then back to her, because he wanted to stay alive long enough to become useful again. Was he lying? Roman did not answer. Nora felt the truth open its mouth. She stepped toward him, slow and furious. Was he lying? No. The office seemed to drop beneath her. Nora stopped. Her mother had been warm hands and lavender soap tired singing in the kitchen, soft hair pinned badly at the back of her neck. Her mother had been the person who checked Nora's homework at the warehouse office, while Grant argued on the phone. Her mother had been the one who told Nora that flowers were honest because they showed you exactly when they were dying. Evelyn Whitaker was supposed to belong to that world. Not this one. Not Roman's. Nora gripped the back of a chair. What was she to you? Roman looked at the rain. I was 24 when I met her. That small beginning hurt more than Nora expected. It made Evelyn reel in his mouth. She was already married to Grant, yes, and you were already this no. Roman's answer came fast enough to feel honest. Nora watched him carefully. He went on. I was working under my uncle then. Dock collections, security, dirty jobs with clean paperwork. Your mother managed floral imports with your father before he learned how to ruin everything he touched. Nora's breath caught. My mother ran the business. She was the business. The words struck something old inside her. Grant had always spoken of the company as his burden, his dream, his sacrifice. Vivian barely mentioned their mother except when she wanted to claim her beauty. Nora had inherited the work, but never the story. Roman moved toward the desk and picked up a glass he had not touched. She found discrepancies in a shipping account connected to my uncle. Small at first, then larger. She came to me because she thought I was less rotten than the men above me. Was she right? Roman's eyes lifted to hers. No. Nora swallowed. The honesty again, brutal, unsparing. But you helped her. I listened. That is not the same thing. No. Thunder rolled over the city. Nora felt cold despite the sealed office. What happened? Roman placed the glass down. She found money moving through Whitaker Floral. My uncle was using your father's company as a wash point. Grant said he did not know. Evelyn did not believe him. Nora's voice dropped. Did you? Roman looked away. No. There it was. The first true shape of her father. Not weak, not only desperate, complicit. Nora sat slowly. The chair felt too large beneath her. My father told us she died in a car accident. She did. The answer came quietly. Nora looked up. But Roman's face had become a locked room. But the truck that hit her was registered to a shell company my uncle used. The old office disappeared for a moment. Nora was 13 again, standing in a black dress that itched at the collar. Vivian crying beautifully into a lace handkerchief. Grant gripping Nora's shoulder too hard while rain beat against the church roof. People had said accident in soft voices. Tragedy. Wrong place, wrong time. Her mother had been buried under polite words. Nora covered her mouth with one hand. Roman took a step toward her, then stopped himself. That restraint did something terrible to her. If he had grabbed her, ordered her touched her without permission, anger would have saved her. Instead, he stood there with his hands at his sides, letting the truth reach her before he did. Did you know? Before she died, Nora asked. No. Did you find out after yes? And you did nothing. Roman's eyes went dark. I killed my uncle. The words entered the room without drama. Nora stared at him. He said it the way someone else might say he signed a contract or closed a door. You killed him. Yes. For my mother, Roman was silent long enough that Nora understood the answer was not simple. For many reasons, he said. She was one of them. Nora stood, anger rising through grief like flame through oil. You do not get to make that sound like justice. I am not calling it justice. Then what are you calling it? Succession? The word chilled her. There was the monster again. Clean suit, scarred hands, eyes like wet stone. Nora walked toward him, stopping just outside his reach. My mother died and you inherited an empire. Roman took the hit without flinching. Yes. She wanted to slap him. She wanted to ask him every question in the world. She wanted him to say one thing that would make him entirely evil so she could stop feeling the pull of him across the room. But Roman did not beg to be understood. That made him harder to hate cleanly. The elevator chimed again. Roman's head turned. Nora stiffened. The doors opened and Harlan stepped out. His dark coat was wet at the shoulders. He looked at Roman first, then Nora, then the ledgers. His expression did not change, but his eyes became sharper. Roman said, "Where is he downstairs?" "Holding room 3. Nora knew he meant Cole. Alive, then. For now. Harlan added, "He is talking." Roman's face emptied again. What did he say? Harlan's gaze flicked to Nora. Roman's voice cut low. "She stays." Nora felt the words before she understood them. Not a request. Not protection, exactly. A decision. Harlan accepted it with a small nod. "He says Grant Whitaker signed storage access 2 years ago. Claims Cole used the overflow bay behind the flower coolers. Says the old account was active before that." Nora's hands went cold. "The old account?" she asked. Harlan looked at Roman. Roman's jaw tightened. Nora stepped forward. "No. Do not look at him. I asked you." Harlan's eyes returned to her. "An account under Evelyn Whitaker's name." The room blurred at the edges. Roman spoke. "Enough." "No," Nora said. "Not enough. Not nearly enough." She moved to the table and pulled one of the ledgers toward her. Her hands shook, but she opened the folder from the box of secondary files, searching through vendor payments, storage access agreements, old routing codes. The pages whispered beneath her fingers. Roman came closer. "You need to stop." Nora did not look up. "You brought me here to find rot. This is not the same. It is exactly the same." "Nora." She slammed a page flat with her palm. "My mother's name is in your money." Roman went still. Nora looked at the document beneath her hand. A storage authorization form. Whitaker Floral Imports. Overflow cold room access. Signed by Grant Whitaker. Witnessed by Cole Maddox. Connected to an account code labeled EW Holdings. EW. Evelyn Whitaker. Nora's throat tightened so hard she could barely breathe. "She has been dead 15 years, she said. Roman's voice was quiet behind her. Someone kept her name alive on paper. Nora turned slowly. "My father. Likely. Likely." The word was too soft for what it carried. Grant had let his dead wife's name sit inside criminal paperwork like a spare key. He had used her memory the way he used Nora's labor, Vivian's beauty, and any kindness that got too close. Nora pressed both hands to the table and leaned over the papers. For a second, she thought she might be sick. Roman said something to Harlan in a low voice. Harlan left without another word. The elevator closed. The office settled again, but the quiet no longer felt controlled. It felt cracked. Roman stood near Nora's shoulder. "I should have told you there might be a connection." Nora laughed under her breath. "That is the closest you get to an apology, no?" She looked up. Roman held her gaze. "I am sorry." The words were simple. No decoration. No excuses. Nora did not know what to do with them. She wanted to reject them. Wanted to throw them back at him because sorry did not resurrect mothers or erase signatures. But she could hear that he had not offered those words easily. Maybe he did not offer them at all usually. That did not make them enough. "You are still using me," she said. "Yes." "At least you admit it. I need what you can see." "And what do I get?" Roman's eyes sharpened not with anger, but attention. Nora straightened. The shaking had not stopped, but it no longer owned her. "You want me to keep working? Fine. Then we stop pretending this is a favor, a threat, or whatever strange thing you think is happening between us." Roman's gaze held. "What do you want?" The question was steady. This time Nora did not say she did not know. "I want my father's debt cleared in writing." Roman did not blink. "Done. I want the warehouse employees protected. Drivers, packers, bookkeepers, people who had nothing to do with Grant or Cole. Done. I want access to every file that mentions Whitaker Floral Grant, Whitaker Evelyn Whitaker, or any shell account tied to those names. Roman's jaw tightened. That is complicated. I did not ask if it was easy. A flicker moved in his eyes. There she was again, the woman from the ballroom who had stared back at him instead of lowering her head. Done, he said. Nora stepped closer. And I do not watch punishments. Roman's face changed. That may not always be possible. Then make it possible. Nora, no. You said you needed someone outside your men because your own people have too much loyalty or too much fear to tell you the truth. Here is the truth. If you turn every ledger I touch into a body in front of me, I will stop seeing numbers. I will only see blood. Then I am useless to you. Roman studied her. Is that strategy or conscience both? A long silence. Rain moved down the windows in trembling lines. Roman's voice lowered. You are negotiating with me. Yes. You understand who I am. Better by the hour. And you are still negotiating. Nora lifted her chin. I am surviving you. The words shifted something between them. Roman came closer slowly enough that she could have stepped back. She did not. He stopped within arm's reach. Survival is dangerous, he said. It teaches people what they can endure. Nora looked up at him. So does being underestimated. For a moment, the office became too quiet around them. Roman's eyes dropped to her mouth. Not long. Long enough. Nora felt the pull of it, unwanted and undeniable, a current beneath the grief, fear, and rage. She hated herself for feeling anything except disgust. She hated him for standing close enough that she could smell rain in his shirt tobacco beneath his skin, the faint clean bite of his soap. Roman lifted one hand. This time he did touch her, only 2 fingers beneath her chin, light enough that she could have turned away. She did not. You should be afraid of me, he said. I am. Good. That does not mean I am stupid. His mouth almost curved. No, it means you are honest. Nora's eyes burned. My honesty keeps getting people dragged into elevators. Roman's hand fell away. Cole dragged himself there. He said my mother's name. Yes. And now I need him alive. Roman went still. Nora saw the resistance form. He knows something, she said. He also lies. Then let me sort the lies. No. The answer came too fast. Nora's temper sparked. No. You do not question Cole Maddox alone. I did not say alone. You do not question him at all. Nora stepped back. You just agreed to give me access. To files. People are files with worse handwriting. Roman stared at her. The line surprised even Nora. Under any other circumstances, it might have been funny. Roman did not laugh. Neither did she. He is dangerous, Roman said. So are you. I am dangerous in ways you are beginning to understand. Cole is dangerous in ways that do not announce themselves first. Nora folded her arms. Is this concern or control? Roman's eyes darkened. With me, it is often both. Another honest answer she wished he had not given. Nora looked toward the elevator. Then stand in the room. Put Harlan in the room. Put 10 men in the room if that makes you feel powerful. But if Cole knows why my dead mother's name is connected to your missing money, I am asking him. Roman's expression hardened. No. Nora held his stare. My father used me because he thought I would never ask the right questions. Vivian dismissed me because she thought I was too small to matter. Cole looked at me and saw a warehouse girl. Do not make their mistake in a better suit. That landed. Roman did not speak for a long moment. Then he turned away, walked to his desk, and pressed a button on the phone. Harlan, Bring Maddox to the lower conference room, alive enough to answer." Nora exhaled before she could stop herself. Roman looked back at her. "You will not be alone with him. I know. You will not stand close to him. Fine, you will not provoke him." Nora gave him a look. Roman's eyes narrowed. "Nora, I will not provoke him unnecessarily. That is not the same thing. It is the offer on the table." For the second time that night, Roman almost smiled. Almost. Then it was gone. The lower conference room was 3 floors below Roman's office, with no windows and walls the color of wet cement. It held a long black table, 6 chairs, a pitcher of water, and a camera in each corner. The air smelled faintly metallic. Cole Maddox sat at the far end of the table with his wrists bound to the chair arms. He looked worse than before. More blood at his lip. More fear behind the arrogance. His hair had dried in uneven strands across his forehead. Harlan stood near the door. 2 other men waited behind Cole. Roman entered first. Nora followed. Cole's eyes found her immediately. "Well," he said, voice rough. The flower girl came back. Roman did not move, but the room tightened. Nora pulled out the chair across from Cole and sat. She placed a folder on the table. Her pencil lay on top of it. Cole looked at the pencil and gave a small, ugly laugh. At the weapon, Nora met his eyes. It worked well enough upstairs. His smile thinned. Roman stood behind Nora's right shoulder. She could feel him there, silent and controlled a wall in a white shirt. Nora opened the folder. "E.W. Holdings," she said. Cole's expression flickered. There. She saw it. Roman saw it too. Nora tapped the page. It was used as a routing account for storage access tied to Whitaker Floral. My mother's initials. My mother's name. She has been dead 15 years. Explain. Cole leaned back as much as the restraints allowed. Ask your father. I will. Then why waste my time? Because you are bleeding in a basement, Cole. That makes this your most honest hour. His eyes sharpened with hate. You think Roman will keep you safe because he likes your little speeches? Nora did not look back at Roman. No. I think Roman keeps things safe when they are valuable. Cole smiled. And you are valuable now. Nora leaned forward. To you, I am a problem. To him, I am useful. At the moment, that gives me better odds than you. Cole's smile died. Roman said nothing, but Nora felt his attention like heat. Cole looked from Nora to Roman and back again. You really do not know, he said. Nora's fingers tightened around the pencil. Tell me. Cole licked his split lip. Evelyn Whitaker found the first laundering route, years ago, before Roman sat in the big chair. Before your father became a drunk with cufflinks, she found the account, found the docs, found the names. Nora's mouth went dry. She tried to stop it. Cole laughed softly. She tried to sell it. The words hit hard enough to empty her lungs. No. Roman's voice cut through the room. Careful. Cole looked at him. What? You never told her. You let her keep the Sainted Mother picture. Nora turned slightly toward Roman. He looked at Cole, not her. Cole pressed on, sensing damage. Evelyn was smart. Smarter than Grant, smarter than half the men at the docks. She found money moving where it should not. She wanted out. New life. New city. Cash enough to disappear. Nora's voice was barely audible. With us. Cole's smile returned softer and worse. That depends which story you prefer. Nora stood so fast the chair legs scraped. Roman's hand closed gently around her wrist. Not hard. Enough. She looked down at his hand, then at him. His eyes were fixed on Cole. "He is trying to cut you," Roman said quietly. Nora pulled her wrist free. "He is succeeding because you keep holding the truth behind your teeth." Roman looked at her then, and for 1 second, she saw something like regret. Cole spoke again. "Ask Roman why his uncle wanted Evelyn dead. Ask him what she had in her possession. Ask him why Grant survived." Roman moved. Not fast this time. Slowly. He walked around the table and stopped beside Cole. Cole's breathing changed. Roman leaned down, placing one hand on the back of Cole's chair. His voice was very soft. "You stole from me. You used dead women and desperate men to hide it. You said her mother's name because you thought grief would buy you time." Cole swallowed. Roman lowered his head slightly. "You are spending that time poorly." Cole's face went pale. Nora gripped the edge of the table. "Roman." He did not look at her. She said his name again, quieter. "Roman." This time he turned. There was violence in his eyes, banked but alive. It should have made him ugly. It did not. That frightened Nora most of all. Power looked natural on him. So did restraint. She was beginning to understand that restraint was not the absence of violence in Roman Blake. It was violence on a leash. "Not here," she said. The words carried the weight of their agreement. For a heartbeat, she did not know if he would honor it. Then Roman straightened. He stepped away from Cole. "Harlan," he said. Harlan opened the door. "Take him back." Cole sagged with relief too soon. Roman looked down at him. No food. No calls. No visitors. Cole's eyes widened. "Roman. And if he says Evelyn Whitaker's name again without being asked, break something he signs with." The guards moved. Nora stayed standing as Cole was dragged out. This time he did not shout. He looked at her once and there was something new in his face. Not contempt. Recognition. He saw that she mattered. She hated that it felt like winning. When the door closed, the conference room seemed smaller. Nora placed both hands flat on the table. Her pencil rolled an inch and stopped. Roman stood across from her. "You should not have heard all of that tonight," he said. Nora looked up slowly. "But I did." "Yes. And you would have preferred to decide when I was ready." "Yes. At least we are consistent." The corner of his mouth moved, but the moment was too bruised to become humor. Nora picked up the pencil and slipped it into her folder. "I want the agreement tonight." Roman's expression settled. "The debt clearance. All of it. My father's debt. Protection for the warehouse staff. Access to files. My right not to witness punishment. My right to question people relevant to my mother's account with you or Harlan present." Roman studied her. "You want rights in a building where most people ask for permission to breathe. I want terms. And if I refuse, Nora, close the folder. Then I walk." Roman took one step closer. "And your father?" Nora's throat tightened. The old chain pulled. Grant's fear. Grant's debt. Grant's lies. She breathed through it. "My father made his choices before I entered your car." Roman's gaze did not leave her face. "You would let him face the debt." Nora felt the pain of the answer before she gave it. "I would let him face the truth." Silence. Roman looked at her as if she had done something far more dangerous than insult him. Maybe she had. Then he walked to the door and opened it. "Harlan." Harlan appeared in the hall. "Bring legal paper. Real paper. Not internal." Harlan glanced briefly at Nora, then back to Roman. Tonight, Roman's voice was low. "Now." Harlan left. Roman closed the door. Nora leaned against the table because her knees had begun to shake again. Roman saw it. He did not mention it. For that she was grateful. After a moment he said, "Your father will not forgive you for choosing yourself." Nora stared at the closed door. He never asked my forgiveness for choosing everyone else. Roman was quiet. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Somewhere beyond the walls, elevators moved through the tower like veins carrying secrets from floor to floor. Nora looked at Roman. "You asked me in the stairwell what I thought I was worth. I remember. I still do not know." Roman's eyes softened by a fraction. Nora continued, "But I know I am not collateral." "No," Roman said. The word came without hesitation. "You are not." The air changed again. Not safe. Never safe. But real. Harlan returned 20 minutes later with a black folder and a woman in a navy suit who looked like she had been woken from sleep and had decided to hate everyone equally for it. Roman stood beside the conference table while she drafted the terms in clean legal language. Nora read every line. Twice. When something sounded slippery, she stopped them. When the phrase reasonable access appeared, she crossed it out and wrote full access pending direct relevance. The lawyer looked offended. Roman looked entertained. Nora ignored both. At 2:17 in the morning, the agreement lay on the table between them. Grant Whitaker's debt to Blake-controlled entities would be cleared upon Nora's commencement of forensic review services. Employees of Whitaker Floral Imports with no proven knowledge of criminal conduct would remain protected from collection activity. Nora Whitaker would receive access to all records tied to Whitaker. Floral Grant Whitaker, Evelyn Whitaker, E.W. Holdings Coal Maddox, and related storage routes. Nora Whitaker would not be required to witness disciplinary action. Nora Whitaker would conduct interviews only with Roman Blake or Harlan Price present. Compensation would be deposited weekly into an account in her name only. That last clause had been Roman's addition. Nora had looked at him when she saw it. He had only said, "Useful things get paid. Valuable people get accounts no one else touches." She had hated how much that sentence loosened something in her chest. Now Roman signed first. His signature was bold, controlled, almost violent in its certainty. He slid the pen to Nora. She looked at the page. This was not freedom. Not exactly. It was not romance, not safety, not rescue. It was a door with teeth. But for the first time the terms were written where she could see them. Nora picked up the pen. Her hand was steady when she signed. Roman watched the ink dry. Then he looked at her. "Your father's debt is clear." Nora should have felt relief. Instead, she felt the shape of a new debt forming in the space between them, one no document could name. The lawyer gathered her things and left. Harlan followed after receiving a look from Roman, leaving Nora and Roman alone in the lower conference room with the signed agreement between them. Nora touched the edge of the folder. "I want a copy. You will have one. I want the first file on my mother before I leave." Roman did not answer immediately. Nora met his eyes. That was not a request. A faint shadow of a smile touched his mouth. "No," he said. It was not. He opened the door and spoke to someone outside. A few minutes later, Harlan returned carrying a sealed gray archive box. He placed it on the table. On the side, written in black marker, were 3 words. Evelyn Whitaker file. Nora stared at the box. For years, her mother had lived in photographs, cemetery flowers, and stories that ended too soon. Now she lived in Roman Blake's archive. Nora reached for the lid, but Roman's hand covered the box before she could open it. She looked up at him. His voice was quiet. "Once you read what is inside, you will not be able to unknow it." Nora held his gaze. "I am tired of being protected by lies." Roman removed his hand. The room seemed to hold its breath. Nora opened the box. The first thing that rose from it was the smell of old paper. Not the familiar warehouse smell of invoices and dust. This was colder, drier, the scent of sealed rooms, dead records, and truths that had waited too long in the dark. Inside were folders stacked with careful precision. Each tab had been typed, not handwritten. Evelyn Whitaker, Pier 11, Whitaker Floral, Insurance Event, Account Transfers, Accident Report. Nora touched the last tab and felt her stomach tighten. Roman stood across from her silent. For once, she did not ask him to explain first. She pulled out the folder marked Evelyn Whitaker. On top was a photograph. Her mother stood outside Whitaker Floral, 15 years younger than Nora remembered her, with her sleeves rolled up and a pencil behind one ear. She was laughing at something outside the frame. Not posing, not polished. Alive in a way that made Nora's throat close. Behind Evelyn stood a younger Grant Whitaker, handsome, then smiling too broadly, one hand resting on the warehouse door, as if he owned what Evelyn had built. Beside him, half turned away from the camera, was a young Roman Blake. Nora stared. He looked almost unrecognizable. Leaner, less scarred. His dark hair longer, his face not yet hardened into the mask he wore now. But his eyes were the same. Watchful. Tired even then. "You knew her well?" Nora said. Roman's jaw tightened. "I knew her enough." "That is not an answer." "No," he said. "It is the only one I can give without making it sound cleaner than it was." Nora set the photo down with care, as if the woman in it could feel rough handling. She opened the next page. Bank transfers, a routing map, a list of shell companies. Nora's eyes moved quickly, not because she understood everything, but because her mind knew how to chase patterns. Money had passed through an account under Evelyn's initials for years after her death. Small amounts at first, then larger ones, storage fees, vendor adjustments, refrigerated cargo credits, insurance recoveries. Her mother's name had become a door. Men had walked through it. Grant had held it open. Nora's breath shook. He used her. Roman's voice was quiet. "Yes." Nora looked at the accident report. The page was thin and official. Rain conditions, late evening, delivery truck, brake failure, collision near the river road. Evelyn Whitaker pronounced dead at the scene. Brake failure. Nora read it twice. Then she read the internal notepaper clipped behind it. Vehicle serviced 3 days prior. She looked up at Roman. His face had gone still. She was killed. Roman did not answer quickly. The delay hurt. "Yes," he said. Nora pressed her palm flat against the table. She needed the cold surface, needed something that would not move. And my father knew. He knew enough to be afraid. That is not the same thing. No. Did he help? Roman's eyes darkened. I do not know. For once the words sounded like something he hated. Nora believed him, and that made everything worse. She lowered herself into the chair. The file sat open in front of her, full of her mother's name, her father's lies. Roman's silence and a city that had eaten the truth then washed its hands in rainwater. Roman pushed a second folder toward her. "What is that?" Nora asked. "Your signed copy, debt clearance, terms, payment account, access authority." Nora stared at the black folder. The debt that had ruled her life was gone. Her father no longer owed Roman Blake $500,000. The warehouse staff were protected. Nora had a salary in her own name files. She could demand questions she could ask. It should have felt like freedom. Instead, it felt like standing at the mouth of a tunnel and hearing something breathe in the dark. Roman watched her carefully. "You can stop for tonight." Nora looked at him. "Can I?" "Yes." "Would you?" His mouth barely moved. "No." Nora nodded slowly. "Then do not insult me with the softer answer." Something almost like respect passed through his eyes. Nora closed the archive box and stood. "I am taking this." Roman's expression hardened. "That file does not leave this building. My mother does." The room went quiet. Harlan, who had been standing near the door, glanced at Roman. Roman did not look at him. Nora held the box against her chest. "You gave me access. If that access only exists where your cameras can watch me breathe, then it is not access. It is theater." Roman stepped closer. "These records are dangerous. So am I, apparently." His eyes dropped to the box in her arms, then returned to her face. "Do you understand what people will do if they know you have that?" Nora felt fear stir, but it did not move her feet. "Yes. No, you do not. Then send Harlan to follow me. Send 10 men. Put a car outside the warehouse. I do not care. But I am not leaving my mother in your archive like she belongs to you." Roman stared at her for a long time. Then he looked at Harlan. "Drive her home." Nora almost protested, but Roman's gaze came back to her. "Not permission," he said. "Protection." She hated that she understood the difference. The ride back to the warehouse was silent. Harlan drove through wet New Orleans streets while Nora sat in the back seat with the archive box on her lap. The city looked different now. Same neon signs, same puddles, same balconies and iron railings and music leaking from late-night bars, but every street seemed to carry a hidden route beneath it. Every warehouse door looked like it might remember her mother. When the SUV turned onto Nora's block, she saw the light on above the floral shop. Someone was inside her apartment. Harlan saw it too. His hand moved toward his jacket. Nora said, "Do not." He looked at her in the rearview mirror. "That is not how this works. It is my door. If there is a threat behind it, it becomes my door." Nora opened the car door before he could argue. The rain had softened to a fine mist. She carried the box under one arm and climbed the narrow stairs. Harlan followed 3 steps behind, silent as a shadow with a pulse. At the top landing, Nora found the door unlocked. She pushed it open. Grant stood in the middle of her apartment-soaked coat dripping onto the floor. Vivian sat at the kitchen table, arms crossed, her red gala nails tapping against a stack of Nora's unpaid invoices as if the papers offended her. Vivian's eyes moved to the box. "What is that?" Nora shut the door behind her. "Something Dad should recognize." Grant's face changed. Not enough for Vivian to notice. Nora noticed. Harlan remained just inside the door. Vivian looked him over and recoiled. "Who is he?" "Insurance," Nora said. Harlan did not smile. Grant stepped forward. "Nora, listen to me." She set the archive box on the counter. "No." His mouth closed. That one word did what years of pleading had not. It stopped him. Nora opened the box and pulled out the photograph of Evelyn outside the warehouse. She placed it on the table in front of him. Grant looked at it as if it were a gun. Vivian leaned forward. "Is that Mom?" Nora kept her eyes on her father. Whitaker Floral was hers. Grant swallowed. "It was ours." "No. It was hers. You inherited her work and turned it into a hiding place." Vivian looked between them. "What is she talking about?" Grant's voice sharpened. "Nothing. She has been with Blake too long already." Nora laughed softly. "One day. That is how long it took a stranger to give me more truth than you gave me in 15 years. Grant's face flushed. "You have no idea what that man is. I know what you are." He flinched then. Actually flinched. "Good." Nora pulled out the account transfer sheet and laid it beside the photograph. EW Holdings, her initials, her name tied to storage access routing payments and cargo movement. After she died. Vivian's tapping stopped. Daddy Grant looked suddenly older, smaller, less like the frightened father of her childhood, and more like a man trapped by doors he had locked himself. "I did what I had to do." Nora stared at him. The oldest excuse in the world. No, she said. You did what benefited you, then called it survival. Grant's eyes filled with a wet, desperate anger. You think your mother was innocent? You think Evelyn did not know what kind of men she was dealing with? Nora went still. Harlan shifted slightly behind her. Grant saw it and pulled back, but the words had already left him. Vivian whispered, What does that mean? Nora's voice dropped. It means he is going to tell the truth, or Roman Blake is going to ask him instead. Grant paled. For the first time in Nora's life, her father looked at her like she had power. Not because she had inherited it, because she had taken it from the place where he buried her. She wanted out, Grant said. Your mother found the accounts. She thought she could use them, thought she could bargain with men who do not bargain. Nora's fingers tightened on the table edge. With Roman. No, Grant said quickly. Not Roman. His uncle. Patrick Blake. Roman was just a soldier then. Nora listened. The room seemed to shrink around every word. Grant looked at the photograph. Evelyn was going to leave. She had documents, names, account numbers. Enough to ruin Patrick and maybe save the business. She said she was taking you girls with her. Vivian made a small sound. Nora could not speak. Grant wiped a hand across his mouth. I told Patrick she had the files. The apartment became silent. Even the rain seemed to stop. Nora looked at him, waiting for some part of her heart to break loudly. It did not. It broke with a quiet, internal snap, clean and final. You got her killed. Grant shook his head. I did not know he would do that. You knew enough. He looked at her then, and whatever excuse he had left died before reaching his mouth. Vivian stood so fast the chair scraped. You told them. Grant turned toward her. Vivian, I was trying to protect us. Vivian backed away from him as if he smelled rotten. Nora gathered the papers slowly, one by one. Grant reached for her arm. Nora, please. Harlan moved before Grant's fingers touched her. He did not grab Grant. He simply stepped between them. That was enough. Nora looked at her father over Harlan's shoulder. Your debt is cleared. Grant blinked. What Roman signed it tonight? You owe him nothing. Relief began to rise on Grant's face. Nora killed it. But you owe me everything. Grant stared. Nora closed the archive box. You are done using the warehouse. Done using her name. Done using mine. Tomorrow morning you will sign over operational control of Whitaker Floral to me, or I give Roman every page with your signature and let him decide what survival costs. Vivian whispered Nora. Nora looked at her sister. Vivian's makeup was smudged. Her perfect red dress was wrinkled. For the first time, she did not look like a queen. She looked like a daughter who had just learned the palace was built on a grave. Nora felt no victory in it. Only distance. Grant sank into the chair. Nora turned to Harlan. Take them downstairs. Harlan looked at her, then nodded once. Grant did not fight. Vivian did not speak. When the apartment door closed behind them, Nora stood alone with the archive box, the old lamp and the sound of the warehouse coolers humming below. Across the street, a black SUV waited near the curb. Roman sat in the back seat, though Nora could only see the faint outline of him through the tinted window. Her phone buzzed. A message appeared from an unknown number. Ask Roman why Evelyn trusted him. Nora looked from the message to the SUV. The car did not move. After a moment, another message came through. Then ask him why she stopped. Nora's hands went cold. The SUV's headlights turned on. Nora stepped to the window, but Roman did not get out. He only sat there watching the building, a dark shape inside darker glass. She should have been afraid. She was. But fear had changed its shape. It no longer told her to run. It told her where to look. Nora returned to the table and opened the archive box again. She took out a blank invoice sheet from her own stack, turned it over, and placed it beside her mother's photograph. Then she picked up her pencil. At the top of the page, in firm, dark letters, she wrote 3 words. Find the truth. Below that, she wrote the names. Evelyn Whitaker, Grant Whitaker, Patrick Blake, Cole Maddox, Roman Blake. She stared at the last name longer than the others. Outside, the rain began again, soft against the glass. Nora circled Roman's name once, not as an accusation, not as forgiveness, as a question she was no longer afraid to ask.